All right, gentlemen. The first thing that I want us to do is look at what the ozone is based on the feedback I got on your discussion from Wednesday. A few of you had some questions about what the ozone is. So I'm going to ask that you look through here. Essentially, the ozone is a layer of the atmosphere that protects us from some harmful radiation from the sun. And there is a hole discovered in it, and there's a lot of debate around what it is and the importance of it and where it came from and how it affects us. So I'm going to give you this website, and if you haven't already, scroll through it. There's a krill one more time and see how see a little bit more about the ozone if we're going to make some good claims and uh, about whether or not the U.S. government should step in and do something about it, and whether we should ask our government to step in and do something about it. So it's important that we remember what claim, evidence, and reasoning are. We know that a claim is what we know, what we think we know. Evidence is how we think we know it, and reasoning is the evidence that supports that claim, that interprets that evidence. So, for example, if we're going to make a claim that either the ozone is or is not a problem that needs to be addressed by the U.S. federal government, that's something that's debatable. Some people are going to say yes, and some people are going to say no, and that should be a fair debate. The evidence, however, should not be debatable. The evidence should be factual, and typically that comes from data often in a table or a graph. The reasoning, in other words, how people look at that data, that can be debatable. And we're going to use tools like slope and y-intercept in order to interpret that data. And in order to interpret that data, we have to be able to use tools like slope and y-intercept. So we're going to be looking at this data that we saw on Wednesday. And this is some data that the Australian government collected about the size of the ozone hole over years, which it sounds like is a bad thing, right? We don't want the hole because the ozone actually protects us. So a hole in it would keep us from being protected. And then we can see that the number of skin cancer cases in Australia has grown a lot, but at times it has also gone down a little bit in the last few years. So we need to be able to look at that data and we need to agree this data is true. We're not debating whether this data is true, but what we can debate is whether or not um, this data supports that we should do something as a government or not do something as a government. So your claim is debatable. Your evidence should not be debatable. That's the facts. But how you interpret that, how you look at this graph and what it tells you, that can be debatable. So again, we're looking at the ozone and we're deciding whether or not it's a big enough problem the government should do something about it. And we're going to use slope and y-intercept to help us understand and interpret that data so we can decide if we're going to push the U.S. government to do something about it or not.